Hello again, awesomers. It is me. It's your old buddy, Steve Simonson, and we are doing another Awesomers podcast episode today. And we're in the Founder Foundations mini-series. Now, what's important about Founder Foundations is that I believe, when a company's founded, the founder itself, yourself, you're a foundation. But the founder also needs to build a foundation of knowledge and a foundation of skills under them to hold up that whole operation. At some point, you're holding up the whole operation kind of on your shoulders, especially when you're beginning. Now, over time, by that skills and knowledge build, you're going to have cornerstones of talent, of people that are going to help you build further and further, wider, perhaps you might say, the foundations, to continue that metaphor. The whole point is to have a company that is on solid foundation so that you, as the founder, don't have to be the solution provider for every problem that comes up. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of those things in the future. Now, today's episode is about key performance indicators. So many people, have you heard of the terminology KPIs, or, in this book, they call it the rocks, and, another book, they have another name for it. But fundamentally, we're saying, how do we make sure that we're measuring and that we are therefore managing the business correctly? As you have heard me say in the past, what gets measured gets managed, right? And if you are not measuring it, then you should not expect that it's being managed. So that can have all kinds of, I suppose, ramifications. For example, if you're not measuring how much inventory you have left in stock, you're probably going to run out of stock, right? If you're not measuring the average time it takes to replenish that stock, you may be measuring the inventory, but you didn't measure the upstream effect of how long it takes to replenish the inventory. Now you got a problem, right? These are just a couple random examples. I may go into some other examples, but my main purpose today is to tell you why KPIs or any kind of performance indicator is important. The first thing I believe is that they most often should tie directly to the strategic objective. They're an indicator to say, are we on the way to accomplishing our strategic objective? So things like sales, right? Often a strategic objective would say, we're going to do X dollars in X, or let's call it Y time period. And so you want to measure how are we doing on our progress to that strategic objective. You may also be tracking margin. I certainly would recommend it. And you may track other things that are really, really important to you, both financial and non-financial, which we'll come to here in a moment. But one word of caution, when it comes to KPIs, I do think a lot of people tend to overdo their first KPIs. They want a dashboard that shows 1,000 different things, and it's got buzzers and it's got whistles, and it's super exciting, and everybody loves it because it's visually attractive, but it doesn't actually tell them enough or anything, right? If you're overwhelmed with information, you're not able to kind of decipher it. In fact, I would say you're overwhelmed with data and you're taking away no information. So being thoughtful about how you start your KPIs, I think is an important thing. And to not overdo KPIs is probably a next important thing. Now, I put a metaphoric asterisk next to this point because that doesn't mean the KPIs necessary for your team to perform their goals aren't important. It's just not important that you know them or that you necessarily are the one who's responsible for tracking them. Depends on if you're their supervisor or not. But let's just assume that you're a management layer or two away from some of the folks in customer service. You don't need to know their average response time to customer service. But it sure would be nice as a metric overall if you knew the company's average response time, particularly if your strategic objective said, we're going to be back to customers within 4 hours of any contact because we're going to be world-class superstar customer service lovers. Imagine if Amazon had a KPI or a service level where they were trying to measure how fast they got back to us and resolved this. Now, they actually do. I'll be honest with you. They just don't share it with us. And whatever their objective is probably too slow for sellers. But I digress. My point here is that there are lots of KPIs and many more will come in the future. And I want you to think about them from the concept, are they a leading indicator of what's to come? Or are they a trailing indicator of what already has occurred? For example, a sale is a great example, and maybe it's a leading indicator of this year's annual sales, but it's a trailing indicator of how is marketing doing and how is merchandising doing, preparing products for sale, right? So thinking about where those metrics and those numbers impact your business and the relevant decisions associated with those various KPIs is as important as the number itself. Really, the contextual application of a specific statistic is only as valuable as you understanding the upstream effect of that number and the downstream, like what it took you to get that. So people use different terminology. So in this context, I'm going to say upstream is what came before, right? These are things that happened up the river before they got to you, and downstream is what happens after it touches your area. This is, you can switch the river the other way. I don't care. But Amazon, for example, uses downstream impact, or DSI, as a key criteria to make decisions. So one of the things they shared with said Amazon Accelerate is that the DSI for a customer who has, I could be getting this wrong, but I think the reference is relevant. Somebody who has a negative customer experience on Amazon, the DSI is I can't remember, something like 50% more likely to stop as being a Prime member than if they're happy at the end of that exchange. And so their 12-month DSI, or downstream impact, is that if they have a problem, they better resolve it to an absolutely delight of the customer, because they know that downstream impact is vital to their business. So managing those things before the downstream impact occurs, like customer service and overwhelming the customer with, happy resolution potentials, that is really, really important to them. And you can see why. This goes for every business. So knowing that you need KPIs is step one. Figuring out what those are and having a process to get to those. There's many ways of doing that. And I'm not going to get into the tactical what ifs and whereases today, but I will just remind you, you need KPIs. Every department, every person should have kind of their own KPIs, but don't let it overwhelm you. And don't start by saying, this month we're doing KPIs and everybody better come up with their KPIs. Just start with the ones that the leadership team needs, and then have a cycle of those publications, whether it's, if you can't do it daily on a dashboard, many of the things, for example, in Parsimony, they come in on the dashboard on a batch basis, every minute or every half hour, 15 minutes, whatever the batches are running. And so you're able to see data in real time, but you can't bring that stuff in like drinking from a fire hose. So weekly, you should review that, right? Maybe weekly, you do an inventory review. Weekly, you're doing a sales and margin review, and you set up these processes with various departments so that you have a system for managing that business without just being constantly in attack mode, right? This is where the chaos of entrepreneurs come from. We're still up at midnight. We see something we didn't like, and now we're panicking about it instead of going, you know what, maybe this should just wait until our meeting on Monday, and then we'll dive into it. And you can even go in and put some notes. I've got questions about this or that, but we're going to handle it on Monday. This is what mature management looks like. And something I really encourage each and every one of you to develop this system for managing your business, essentially measuring your business, so that the chaos starts to fade away a little bit. And then order is what replaces chaos. For those wondering at home, if you can replace your chaos with a sense of order and a sense of, not that we're ignoring things, but a sense of Yes, we have urgency, but we know exactly when we're going to attack this problem because we do inventory meetings Monday morning at 11 a.m. And that's when this is going to rise up and we're going to deal with it. And then we're going to have a plan. Like that is decisiveness. That is order. And order always beats chaos. That's for sure, everybody. So KPIs important. Notation, don't let it overwhelm you. Over time, let each department and each position have its own KPIs, and don't feel that you have to come up with each of those yourself. It's reasonable to think that up front, but believe me, the team will ultimately be better at it. And I've had departments that came up with metrics and things I would have never thought of that were both objective, easy to measure, and meaningful to the downstream impacts. That's where the power comes from, everybody, knowing why we do the things now and what that benefit can help us prevent, right? We learn to prevent problems upstream, and then we learn that the downstream impact becomes actually positive. And we go, gosh, that's looking good. Our decisions we made a month ago or 6 months ago, they're starting to have that positive result we were looking for because order beats chaos. There you go, everybody. We're going to keep going on Founder Foundations. I hope you're enjoying it. If you are, go ahead and share this, like it, tell the algorithm of the social platform or whatever you're watching this on that this is valuable to you. Heck, leave us a review. Why not? That would be a nice little gift to pay it forward on your part back to the community. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Awesomers Podcast.